All right, before we get freehand sketching, let's talk a little bit about the tools. Because I like to use Photoshop, but really these are techniques that would work with traditional media just the same. Now, one of the critical parts about this freehand perspective is finding a nice balance between loose and fluid, so you don't feel bogged down by rules, but also tight enough to be accurate. We don't want to just be sloppy. So when I'm using Photoshop, what I like to do is the click, shift-click method. And that pulls a quick straight line between the 2 points. You're defining the beginning and the end point. Now, a great way to practice this is to see if you can draw a line that falls on 2 points. But you're not going to start or end on either of the points. Your line has to be longer than those 2 points. Because connecting the dots is easy, starting right on one point and going right to the next. Harder, though, is to make your straight line hit a couple dots in the middle, but continue moving. See, here I missed it. I didn't connect through both dots, so that would be incorrect. So try giving yourself a page of 2 points. And then just go through and try and connect them. It might seem simple, but this is actually harder than it looks. But it's really great practice for freehand perspective. You're going to be doing lots of little straight lines like this. All right, now we're going to be working on a perspective grid like I showed in the last video. So let's talk about how you draw on a perspective grid. Essentially, you've got lots of parallel lines receding to a vanishing point. So you're always going to be drawing lines that are lined up with them, that are parallel. So that means if you have a line that crosses one of them, it's incorrect. If it goes between them so it could never cross them, that's correct. But again, if you cross one of these lines, it means that you are not going towards a vanishing point. So that is incorrect. All right, now that the ground rules are set for how to draw these lines using the grid, let's just draw a simple plane. And what's a plane? Well, it's 2 sets of parallel lines. So here's one set of parallel lines going to the right vanishing point. And here's another set of parallel lines that are going to the left vanishing point. And then if I want to make this cleaner, I just erase everything outside of that plane. And there it is, a rectangular plane sitting on the ground. And honestly, this is such a fundamental aspect of the freehand drawing method, getting used to drawing rectangles on the ground, that one exercise I'd suggest you try is drawing a field of rectangles. So there's a first one, but then you can just keep adding additional rectangles. So these are all sitting very square with one another. They're all lined up in parallel, and you're just drawing along the grid. Now this might seem boring and straightforward, but really this just helps you get used to using the 3D grid. So I'm going to speed this up a bit and show you what the rest of this worksheet could look like, but try taking some of the grids that I've included in the resources folder and make pages of these. Really, it will help you out a lot, and you'll see why in the upcoming videos. Okay, so that's a lot of planes on the ground, simple rectangles. But what about our cube? Well, a cube is essentially the same thing. So I'll start with that front-facing line. And then I'll draw that right face. So I'm deciding how deep it is now with this vertical and erasing away what I don't want. I'm just following the grid, using straight vertical lines to show the height. And I'm just building a simple cube out of planes. So here you'll notice that I'm going to actually draw through this as if it were made out of glass, so I could see all the faces at once. And this really helps you think in 3D. And then once I've made my shape, I'll erase the extra. Because drawing in this way, you oftentimes have sort of run over lines, where you've gone too far, and then you divide it a little bit, and you have to erase the excess. Especially working digitally, that's no problem at all. All right, so let's do another one here. Now, I really like drawing in this method because it's kind of hard to mess up. If you're drawing a line that's receding to the right side of the page, you know it has to be parallel to the grid. If it's going to the left side of the page, it has to recede in parallel to the left vanishing point. So you're always just following this grid. All right, let's pause it a second here. Now, the question might be, where is the back vertical? And the way you know where it is you've drawn out each of these 2 lines And wherever they intersect, well, that's the corner. So you know that's where you pull your vertical from. Now all that's left is drawing the top of the cube. And what information do we have? Well, we have 3 points, and we have a back vertical. So let's extend out some parallel lines from those 2 points, and once they touch each other, there's an intersection point with that back vertical. Well, that's our top. So in a way, as you begin to have more and more of your drawing completed, the rest is even easier to make because you've got all these existing landmarks to use as reference points. And then if you don't want it to be a transparent cube, you simply erase away those back sides. But it's still good to draw it in transparent view first, just so you make sure you really have a 3-dimensional form, even if you clean it up later. You can also start a cube from the totally opposite direction. Let's start with the top face. So here I'll just draw a normal rectangle using the click, shift, click method just like before. And once I have this rectangle, I can use any of those intersections to make the corners of my cube. So I'll pick a corner and then pull a line straight down. And I'll do that on all the corners. So now you see the cube starting to take shape. And I can draw more parallel lines to help define where the bottom of that cube is, making sure that I actually stay parallel with the grid. And then here I am one more time at that critical moment where I've got one remaining face and I've got some points to use as anchors. So here I'll take the existing points I have and I'll extend parallel lines towards the vanishing points. And again, once they intersect, I have my face. And you can see here that I messed it up a little bit. Well, sometimes you need to correct and make sure all of your points are meeting up at those nice clean intersections. And then erase away what you don't need. Now, once you've got a basic cube like this, you can actually begin to extend your scene. So just like we drew rectangles on the ground before in that previous exercise, here I can draw rectangular forms that might start to look like sidewalks or any kind of thing I want. So really all I'm doing is following the grid. I'm making sure my lines are parallel, receding to those vanishing points, and then I can do whatever I want. I can pull verticals and make it look 3D. And here I'm just playing. And once you start getting the hang of drawing on the grid like this, it really feels very intuitive. Now I know this has been a lot of ground to cover, so I'd recommend starting simple. Work on those straight lines, the line segment drill. Might seem easy, but give it a shot. Next, I've included some grids in the resources folder. So use those grids and try drawing cubes. Or if you want to start easier than cubes, do the basic rectangles on the ground exercise. I'm not kidding when I say you can't do enough of these. This really gets you in the mindset. And if this is starting to click, go crazy. Add some 3-dimensional depth to it. But I gotta warn you, what we're doing here is the core of the rest of this series. So make sure you get this part before you move on to the next videos. Really, this is kind of fun. So get drawing some rectangles, and once you feel cozy, we'll go on to the next exercise.